Start with a little prayer. We begin in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we ask you to send your Holy Spirit down upon us. We're here because we love Christ. We want to be his followers. We also understand the call to imitate him. Keep us faithful to you, Lord. And may the good things that we read in here help us see you one day in heaven. Through Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. All right, great. So now, as you know, I always begin, for those who are in my class, there is 7 classes, I think it is. I'll explain that later. But anyway, I always have the same 5 slides at the beginning or so, because I always go through it, because I can't tell if there are new people that came in online, they don't understand it. But as you can see, what's important that's going to drive this is the parish website. So because that's where I'm going to put all the information. So get used to kind of going there. And what you do is that this is the front page of the website. Let me draw on it. So you'll want to give them the slides online. There we go. All right, good. So what you're going to see here is this is the parish website, and then I put this little icon right here that looks just like the slide, so it should be very identifiable, all right, at princeofpeace.me. And then when you do that, you're going to go to this page. And what's important, if you haven't done it yet, is to get a flock note, signature, sign in there. If you already got one, you already know you're signed in if you already got one. Although I did send it to a number of people who didn't necessarily sign up for it, just to see if they were interested in it. So anyway, sign up for the materials. If you're not getting anything, put your name in there. It'll work it out. Then it has the schedule of what we're going to cover. It also has this big link to Microsoft Teams, so that should put you right in very easily. And then there's this additional material right here that you'll want to focus on, okay? As people give me information and as I find more information, I like to put that on there. No problem. So this is the schedule that we're going to be working on. So we're here Monday with the introduction. I try to make it about 30 pages a week. So that's like 4 or 5 a day, maybe, if you didn't skip a day or something like that. That's hopefully doable if you wanted to read it at night or something. So that's the 7 classes that we're going to go through. Today we're doing just the introduction, all right? And I'll explain that after. This is my big new sign here. The event will never be canceled. So it's not canceled. It means not ever canceled, because we invite everybody on here. If you can learn how to do that, then you will be all set, all right? You'll be able to get online with all of them. And so remember, guys, online, if you're looking through a little block, you can pick the slide, right-click it, and pin it. And when you pin it, it makes it large so that then you can read it. All right, so there's no reason to do inclement weather anymore. That then cuts us off, because what happens is I try to design this so that it ends right before Lent. So you're all ready for Lent. That's where it ends. All right? We are recording it, so I am also going to put the recordings down below if I can get them in time. That's why at the bottom of the website here, you're going to start seeing kind of like introductory class, second class, first class. So you can, and what I do is we take the slides, and we had Claire who was doing it all, but she's now has some major health problems, but having to put the slides in the audio. So there's no picture at all. It's just the audio along with all the slides, so that if somebody misses a class, you can go onto the website. It'll have all of those down below. All right? What I have also on this link right here, which is one of the important links, is the outline of the entire book. If you download that, if you've been onto the website, I don't know if you saw that. It's a couple of pages. But this, all I did here, and this is the way I study it, okay, is that I give you all the chapters that I'm going to be doing, and then what I will be doing is putting notes under each one of those in an outline format. That's just the way I learn, very organized. So I will have, if you have that, you will see, this is exactly these are the chapters I'm covering, because they're only like a page each chapter, and then I will cut them out and put them there, so you'll be able to see parts of those pages, kind of what I think anyway, and what I think doesn't matter as much as if you think there's something that's interesting that might be even more interesting. All right. So the other thing that someone gave me was there, if you like this, there is an audio reading of the book on YouTube. So if you know how to deal with YouTube, what I did was I put it on the website. So on the little lower hand corner, it's on an old picture though, but that's an old one. I put it on there so that you can just click it and you can just listen to the audio if you want to, or use it on your phone if you wanted to. Some people feel like that it's better to do it that way. All right. So we are in the very first class, which is the introduction to the Imitation of Christ. And then we'll start reading pages 23 to 55. This is one of the things that I say this at the end of the book in my notes as well. Do not worry at all. Do not worry at all if you're behind or ahead or whatever, not match up. Because the way this book has been used by the great saints is they read a chapter every day for the rest of their life. So this idea that don't think of this book, especially the Imitation of Christ, think of it more as, like the Bible where you read sections of the Bible all the time. That's the way the saints read this book. They took notes on it. You could actually, some of the saints even have their book, like St. Teresa of Lisieux. You could look through the book, you could see what she thought was important about her copy of the Imitation of Christ, and which is pretty amazing. So that's why when we did Introduction to Devout Life, people were like, oh my gosh, I'm way behind. I can't believe. I'm like, look, read that the rest of your life. They're only one little chapter, so don't worry about it. So today we're going to do the Imitation. So we're going to do the introduction, get an idea of what you're going to be about, what you're reading, and its influence in Catholicism, really, that we probably don't have any idea how influential it was, or it is still today. All right? So let's start with the text. It was written in the 15th century. And apart from the Bible, it is said that this book was really, there's been no other Christian book as influential and has been translated into as many languages except for the Bible. This Christian book has been translated. And I think that's very important. The author is Thomas à Kempis, which, of course, Thomas means from Kempen, from the hometown. That's where he was from. And I always like to do this, whether some of you might find it interesting, but where is that, right? So if this is Belgium here, I used a Google map. So it's right here. So in that area, here is Paris here. So you can see that it was there, in kind of a German-Dutch area of the area, and that's the hometown. That's why it says à Kempis, from Kempen, which is the hometown. All right. Now he is accepted as the author of the book, but if you've read in different places that, like everything else that was written a long time ago, who was really the author and how many, but he's accepted as the author, so it's kind of mute to find out to decide who else was part of that. He was what was called the brother of a common life. There was a movement, and I'll talk a little more about it later, but just to give you an idea first, there was a movement that was happening among the lay people because of the state of the clergy. You think it's bad now, it's always been bad. It's never been that great, the state of the clergy. And so this book was written as an attempt to kind of call people back to holiness and back to sanctity because of the state of the church. So he was born in 1380. He died in 1471. All right, and I'll explain more about that after. This part of spirituality. See, I think a lot of people just think that the spirituality that you have now is all there is, but when you take a class in spirituality, you realize that there were movements of spirituality that happened throughout all of history. And when you take a look at the New Testament time, you could study them in terms of their spirituality, and especially as they were close to Jesus, very much the gospel and the common life that they lived. Then there was sort of the Dark Ages that happened, right? And then we had Augustine and the influence of Plato and the influence of philosophy into the High Middle Ages. And what was happening in the faith is that spirituality tended to be very much theoretical. So in the universities of Paris, by the time Thomas Aquinas was writing, religion and theology was about speculative theology and talking about, no, so the questions would be, how many angels fit on the pin of a needle, right? How do you know that those kinds of questions that were happening, and they were theological questions, but they occupied a lot of the time, and it became much more academic. So what happens is that the people, the common people, so to speak, felt like that was very much detached from their experience. So there's this movement called Devotio Moderna. Devotio Moderna was a movement in the church that wanted to call things back, and it was right around the 14th century. So this book is specifically part of that spirituality. So this book, this thing right here, where you see this, this book, that's a cover for what was called the Western Spirituality, Classics of Western Spirituality. And they just had hundreds of these books. And when it was printed as a big, huge volume, or releasing one book on the different movements. So you had like the Anabaptist movement, but then you had, Augustine and Aquinas and the Dominican and Franciscan spirituality, and within the Franciscan spirituality, you would have something that was more St. Francis, but then you had Bonaventure, was more intellectual, and so there's all of this going on in terms of the kinds of spirituality. A lot of people, we think, we just go to Mass, right? And we have a spirituality. And you realize that it's really flowing from something. So this Devotio Moderna spirituality is a very important segment of spirituality, and things written in this time would often fit in that category, and that's the category that this book fits in. This is the classic. So if you were to talk about the Imitation of Christ to someone who was a spirituality major, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's in the time period of Devotio Moderna. All right. So this was because religious reform was started by this Catholic deacon Groot, who's might be part of the writing of this, and it tried to rediscover kind of the pious practices and humility and obedience and simplicity of life, because now we had these great universities, and clerics are also connected with the affluent people, that it felt like they were lacking kind of this humility. And so was the spirituality, even the grandeur of the liturgies and the big cathedrals. Now, this is speaking more simplicity, humility, and obedience. So Christian meditation and this idea of projecting oneself into the gospel, sitting with the readings that a lot of you might do in adoration, could think that this has always been this way. This actually developed out of this period. And you can see that, we'll see that some of the great influential spiritual trends, like St. Ignatius, was influenced by this kind of spirituality, where, when they have the spiritual exercises and they want you to take a gospel reading and you read it a couple of times, all right? And I think where did that come from? So anyway, but it promoted a more intense personal relationship with God over what they considered the sort of pride of theologians, the learned people who were kind of filled in themselves. That's why you see so much about humility in this book. The only reason why someone would talk about something is usually, a lot of times when you're doing studying, is it just doesn't come up. They're often responding to something that's going on. Right? I mean, that's the way almost everything is written. And so when we read a text today, you often have to go back to the historical context to find out why would that be such something that's so important to him. For the Imitation of Christ, it was because there was this great big division with the sort of arrogant kind of institutional, pompous religious. And so this book was constantly trying to talk, we need to be more humble and obedient, and had simplicity of life. You might think, hey, that's no problem, right? For us today, of course. But you could think that it would be pretty different. The high theology in the universities in the Middle Ages became less connected to the Christian life. People feel like they have an in with it. So, like you'll see in book 1. So God, it said that, a good and pure conscience will give more joy than all the philosophy one has ever learned. Now, the only reason why he would say something like that is because he's contrasting the fact that you can have you might have all this knowledge of philosophy, but yet you have a pretty bad conscience and an impure kind of life if you're living an impure life. Another one, it says, fervent prayer will bring more happiness than a multi-course banquet. Now, with a multi-course banquet in quotes, this idea. So fervent prayer, then all the many classes you can go to. So in one sense, I could teach you a lot about this. You would be able to repeat. You'd know a lot about Thomas A. Kempis. You would know, but yet your life would still be filled with terrible disorder, and that's what he's trying to say. And in silence will be more exhilarating than long tales. So all these big, long teachings that I do, much better to just be silent and listen to the voice of God. Holy deeds will be greater valued than nice sounding words. Now, the only reason why he would say that in chapter 24 is because people weren't doing anything good. They just had a lot of nice theology. But in the end, you've got to go and do something. So the influence, though, one of the things about the devotio moderna is, and that intense personal relationship with God, is that you can see that Protestantism and Reformation, which would have happened in the next century, many think they find their roots in this kind of spirituality that was going on in the church, right? Luther, the sort of a more individualistic attitude toward belief in religion. And so one of the things that they would say is that this had Protestantism was an outgrowth of this kind of movement, because the church, as usual, when different movements happen, wasn't, especially if they were being criticized, wasn't well accepted at the time. And so they had a lot of criticism. And, and so some people who would go even further, this group, by the way, always stayed within the church as part of the church, but they would say maybe some of them left it. So anyway, this rose out of a widespread dissatisfaction with the church, this book at the time, both in its structure and the personal lives of the clergy, as I mentioned. The lack of moral values among the clergy began, and what's important to it is that this began as a lay movement. It was almost like a reform that was starting. In the wake of the Protestant Reformation, the movement, called the Devotio Moderna, but also what they call the common life, brothers and sisters of the common life. And what they would do, and I think I have things on this. No, maybe I didn't do that. I can't remember now. But the common life where people would get together and they would live together in the common life like the early apostles, and have houses and do works of ministry, not religious, but lay people who would get together. And but the problem was they were still connected with the church. And at the Protestant Reformation, as you know, in many of the places where there were Protestants were in the majority, they shut down all the monasteries and they shut down all of the common life, the brothers and sisters of the common life, because they didn't believe Protestant Reformation. That was part of the reform, was to remove all the religious out. And that's why by the 1600s, pretty much all the houses of the brothers of the common life and sisters of the common life disappeared, because they were pretty much closed by the Protestants. And they had a hole in this part of Europe, and so. But what's important about the book is, I think anyways, in recognizing, is that it grew out of a lay movement wanting to reform or have another aspect of the church. Okay? So let's talk about his audience, because when you read it, you think that it was written for a monk, right? Because he often describes that he's talking to a monk, but it became widely read through all states of life, and the focus was really on the interior life and withdrawal from kind of the mundane things of this world. That was very important because they really kind of people who oppose this book find that there's not enough doing good things, social justice things in here. So a lot of people who love this book don't tend to focus as much on doing works of justice or social justice. The emphasis in the last chapter is obviously on the Eucharist, and the Eucharist is the key element of the spiritual life. So I want to do is go over with you for a second some of the reactions to this, and we talked about some of this because it's in the introduction with Knox, and I want to make sure we appreciate them in particular, because his reactions is that this is quite a serious and mature spirituality. I remember when I was doing my degree in spirituality in Rome, the professor said that beginners should not start this book, but it's such an easy book to read, so it feels like it's a beginner book. And then he was saying it is not a beginner's book, and if you're doing spiritual direction with people, you should not begin with this book. And I thought, I'm not so sure about that, but I think what happens is that when you read some of the quotes, and even Knox himself, he says, if a man, and this is the one we have mentioned, if a man tells you that he is fond of imitation, because that's, right, it's also known just as the Imitation, view him with sudden suspicion if he likes this book, because he's either a dabbler or a saint, so, which I think is kind of interesting, right? So either he doesn't know what he's talking about, he's playing around with these ideas of obedience and humility, but he doesn't know what he's talking about because he really doesn't even know what it means to put yourself last. He just loves a lot of the words, which I can attest to because I think I like a lot of that stuff. I don't do it, but it sounds pretty, and it sounds like we should be doing it. And if I actually did do that, I might become a saint. Who knows? But I think that it's very important to recognize that it's really not a casual book. So he says, no manual is more pitiless in the exposition of the Christian ideal, less careful to administer consolation. If you want to feel good about yourself, read Henry Nouwen, right? Don't read this, because he says there's much about asceticism and cross-carrying. Carry your cross and deny yourself, deny the things of the world, deny the things that make you love something other than God first and foremost. Now that sounds very good, right? Until we say, yeah, that means it's the TV show you watch, or the other things that you do at other times. And most of the time when I'm sitting with people, and I know this for myself, and I say this is somewhat unjust with talking about spirituality, it is very easy to kind of excuse ourselves into thinking that, yeah, we do that. And we really don't do that until it's actually taken away from us. Then we really know how much we love something, right? But it's like, I even say, I was like, look, I'm not attached to this. Of course, I could give it up at any time, but I don't have to give it up because it's not a problem for me. Well, try it and see. And then you'll find out that it is a problem for you. I don't really care what people think about me. That's another one. The other one that is going to come up 1,000 times over is gossip. Gossip is detrimental to the soul, and yet it is the thing that we excuse ourselves from over and over and again, and actually even sometimes say, I'm not a gossiper. Really, I don't. I mean, I don't even really say many things about other people, But anyway, you get the point what I'm saying, because I say the same thing about myself. So anyway, he says the whole work was meant to be surely what it is, a sustained irritant, which will preserve us if it is read faithfully from sinking back into relaxation. Like I'm just gonna kind of grab a little glass of wine and read a little Imitation of Christ, right? From self-conceit, from self-pity, from self-love. And we have a lot of that, and it's oftentimes hidden. One of the things my own spiritual director, who's someone I've lived with forever, is remember that the ability for self-deception is limitless, and that your self-love. I don't have that. Chances are you would, right? It offers consolation here and there, a couple of things, but always at the price of fresh exertion of keeping your head pointed upstream. Heaven help us if we find easy reading in the Imitation of Christ. All right? Because then you're just fooling yourself. So the familiarity with this great classic is, and this is Benedict Rochelle, by the way, is an integral part of the mature spiritual life and even a path to holiness. All right? So I'm telling you this only because what I think happens in all of this too is that it when we try, I'll give you my own experience. When we try to, let's say we're going to start doing this, deny ourselves from these things and of things of the world, kind of that, and is that you will find that people around you don't understand what you're doing. And they will often think that you're crazy. You have to deal with the fact that if you have a different path and you feel like, okay, I really want to begin on this true path of holiness and of self-denial and of whatever I empty out of myself, I can fill with God, people will think that it is crazy. Because as long as you are attached to the things of this world, and we will be, because we have one foot in this world and we have one foot in eternity. We're body and we're spirit, and we'll always have that play that people outside that don't understand what you're doing have a hard time accepting it, and you get lots and lots and lots of criticism for trying to start this kind of life and believing in it. Does that make sense? If you haven't already done it, if you haven't already felt a little of it.
After having read the last book.
Yeah, and last book, by the way, says after reading the last book, which is Introduction to Devout Life.
Right. A friend of mine decided to get rid of all the R-rated movies and things like that.
She said get rid of all the R-rated movies in the house.
So a family member was going through all the movies in the house and organizing them and stuff like that, and she said, all the R-rated, I don't want, throw them out. And she kept saying, well, what about this? All the R-rated, throw them out. And this family member was just beside herself. It's like, what do you mean? What don't you get?
I know.
It's R-rated.
Get out. Right.
Get rid of it.
Yeah. And they said, well, this one's not that bad,
Right.
Did you hear that? This one's not that bad.
This is an action movie.
Yeah.
That's why it's art. Get rid
of it.
Right.
No, it's hard. So we got two questions online. If you're going to, Catherine Gentile, if you want to unmute yourself, you can, we're going to allow your microphone and let you unmute yourself and you can speak.
I appreciate that, but I was playing around with this and I hit mute by accident.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. So now I wonder why we get that feedback for her. Are there other people that are unmuted? Oh, your microphone in front of your speaker. Take your microphone away from your speaker. All right. And then is Arthur? Arthur, your guest, your hand is up too. Do you have a question? Probably not. All right. We'll let you be. All right, good. So let's talk about the influence of saints. So St. Ignatius of Loyola. We have St. Francis de Sales. This is Thomas More. Thomas More always had a copy of the Introduction to Devout Life. St. Therese of Lisieux, Thomas Merton, and this is Wesley, actually, John Wesley, who was a Methodist. He would have liked it because of the Methodist, too. So criticism. One is that this is too inner focused, and very little about social and neighbor responsibility, taking care of the poor. And it's not directed toward any liturgical piety, going to the Mass, except for the Eucharist. But the Eucharist itself is not the liturgical celebration of the Eucharist. It is this Eucharist as a presence of the presence of Christ and receiving it, which would have been at the time theologically. So anyway, that you can get, that, but as long as you know going in there that you're reading that this is going to be about your own personal conversion, renewal, and inner spirit sanctity, but in the end, it should also call you out. We know that, right? I mean, you can't help but grow closer to God, but then give your life to serving God's people, right? And even the monks. I mean, even Saint Therese of Lisieux, who was cloistered. I mean, she's considered the patron saint of the missions. It's like missions. She never went on missions, but that was her goal. Was not. She didn't pray for herself. She wasn't in there for herself. She prayed for the missions. She prayed for the priests. She prayed for the holiness of a people who didn't believe. That became that her life in the convent was about other people, and not really just about herself. That's what she had a call to do, and the conversion of the others, and the relationship with the other sisters. All right. One of the things I think would be interesting is that when I was reading about the author or the translator Knox, is very fascinating. I don't know if anybody knows of him. I did not know of him, but I thought it's a good thing to share with you because he's the one he's got the famous translation of this. He's the one who's known for this. And he's an intriguing person because this is who he is. A little dapper, right? Knox. Ronald is his first name. He was born in 1988. He died in 1957. But he was ordained an Anglican priest in 1912, but he converted to Catholicism in 1917 and was friends with Chesterton. So you know what world we're in right now with this translator, right? He was a Catholic priest in 1918, and he wrote mystery stories. So he was educated in Eton and Oxford. So we are certainly in the English world here. And he completed the Knox Bible, which is the English Bible translated from the Vulgate that many of the Catholics use. If you have heard of the Knox Bible, sometimes you'll see some very old ones, but he was translated that. And he used to read a chapter every day of the Imitation of Christ. But, this is what's awesome, he died before we completed the translation. And so Michael Oakley finished it. So you'll see both Knox and Oakley. He really only translated, he only read book 2, chapter 4. So, but yet he is known for the translation for this translation that we're familiar with. But what I really like about this and him in particular, because I like that, is his connection with Chesterton, which then would also have been connected with Tolkien and all of that, and would also have been even later of John Cardinal Newman. It's that intellectual life, and he was promoting the imitation of Christ as part of the spirituality, but that he was one of all of that Anglican and the Oxford movement. So the work is divided into 4 books. Should be very fine. You should know that by now. The first book is very helpful in counsels of the spiritual life. Second book is Directives of the Interior Life, stripping of us of all attachments, renouncing any kind of vain resistance, resisting temptation and distractions in this life, giving up pride in book 1, and solitude and silence. That's all in book 1. So the withdrawal of an outward life, as duties allow, because obviously if you're a mother, you've got to take care of those things. Renouncing all that is vain and resisting temptation and all the distractions that life has, and giving up on pride, which is another thing, the pride of learning. When you think you're so smart. What's interesting is that, especially today when there's so much on the internet and everybody's reading so many things and they become experts on all kinds of things, and how much pride there is, and even in a discussion, and everybody's trying to tell us what they know. and sometimes even loudly and dismissive and all of that. And I personally, when I get involved in that, especially as I spend even more time with Introduction to Devout Life and here and Imitation of Christ, how really, I think, this is personal now, I think the evil present in all of that and all the self-righteousness and the pushing of their agendas and their attitudes. And then you read something like this, and it's all about, the giving up the pride of learning and trying to be humble, and that maybe they know, maybe they don't. I don't know for sure what that all means, and that's really an amazing place to be, because I think what happens is even good people of faith can pride themselves in their knowledge of the faith. And sometimes maybe our dealings with our young people, and sometimes even our children, some humility and some, and humble way of dealing with them would be maybe much more effective than telling them what they have to do, which I think, especially once they're older, I'm not talking about when they're younger, you always tell them what to do when they're younger, but when they're older, because you have to, when there's a book on returning people to church, how you just have to keep listening and listening and listening, humbly listening, even though your temperature is boiling inside. Maybe I'm projecting. But anyway, when I'm like, all I want to say is you're an idiot. You're just an idiot. That's all you are. But I can't. So I say, tell me more. Tell me more. So anyway, just kidding, guys. The second book is the Directives of the Inner Life, stripping us from all attachments. So attachments and mortification and asceticism, we give up our own way, not because of peace. We don't give up our own way because of peace. So we want to make peace, but because progress is when you acknowledge yourself as inferior to everyone else. Now, can you imagine having that you are everyone else's inferior, because that's going to help you with humility. People are like, are you crazy? Avoiding gossip in this chapter, as I mentioned, because it says, what I think is interesting, you will never know interior devotion until you hold your tongue about the concerns of other people. That, I think, is I think in my wisdom that in the years that's becoming more what I believe, it's hard, and the importance of having a good conscience in chapter 2. All right. Faith in Jesus, not in human beings, not in the president, not in anybody else that's going to save us. Only only God himself. Faith in Christ. No matter if he's of your party or not of your party. That none of them are where I put any of our faith. False sense of freedom and overconfidence are obstacles in the spiritual life. A lot of people, I think, as I reflect on my life, and you can tell me more if you want to share with your life, we think we are freer than we really are, and in terms of what we really want to do, and that's why this false sense of freedom and overconfidence in our obstacles in the spiritual life. You're really sure about where you are in your faith. You attribute all the good to God, even the small ones, because you consider him the giver of all that is good. So all the good that happens is not by your own effort. You're not holy. You're not holy. If anybody, they say the thing about humility and holiness is that as soon as you think you have it, you no longer have it, right? That's the thing about humility, right? See, I'm going to do this because I'm humble. Well, then now you're going to pride yourself in your humility, and you've lost your humility. The issue, and so how did you work with this thing? And because I've thought about that a lot of times, because how will you know that you're humble? And I think the answer is you will never know, but it's what other people will say about you in the end. Like even Mother Teresa, constantly working on humility. We all think that she's a saint in humility. She does not. I have to keep working on being humility. That's the whole thing. Do what Jesus was doing. Do unto others. All that stuff, and that was her life, constantly reminding herself of that. And we all thought that she had enough. I mean, She didn't only could have. She only had to done half of what she had done, and she'd still be considered holy, right? But I think that's the answer to it. Is that you will never know it yourself, but because what happens is even as you try to be humble, you're doing it. See, see how humble I'm becoming. You get caught in that thing. That's why it's very, very important to always recognize that that the ability to deceive yourself is endless, is limitless, as I mentioned. Right, so she was talking about, well, in the corporate world, you're a hypocrite. Did you say that? Maybe I fed that in. Okay, no, in the corporate world, you're a hypocrite because you want to be humble, but yet you have to push yourself forward, right? Because you have to make it. Yeah, I don't know. It's an R-rated movie, so I don't think you're going to be able to watch it. She's not, but it's still a great movie. Al Pacino's, and it's The Devil's Advocate. That is such a great, because I do think you want to engage in that world. That's what the world is about. And anyway, it's Al Pacino who is the devil, and then this lawyer, and the lawyer keeps winning, and he thinks he's winning, and the devil's the one making him win. And then he's like, it comes at the end, his face at the end, what he, that he wanted all of this, and this is what comes along with it. And he became what he wanted to be, what he wanted. So it is tough. I think that you want to speak honestly all the time, because one of the things too about humility, there's also a false sense of humility, and somebody accused me of that one time, and I was very insulted. But he said to me, and this is his exact phrase, because I said something like, well, I'm not really good at that. And he looked at me and he said, your false humility is unbecoming. Wow, we're gonna make me cry, what are you talking about? But it was true, because I really didn't believe that. I didn't believe I was better, and he saw right through me. And so I always remembered that, about that, being honest about who you are and remember that it's not groveling on the ground kind of humility. What humility is living in the truth. This is who I am. For example, all the good that I have, all the good that I do comes from God. So when they say, you know what, it is by God's grace that I go here. Then also too, you recognize that when you know that there are people around you that don't do it so well as you do, it's because they weren't given the gifts, but that you were given the gifts by God, not by your own effort. And that's a different kind of thing to recognize, because then you have a sense of gratitude, and you're always willing to help someone else out, because it's not a competition, and I'm not here to step over you, but yet they'll step over you, and then you'll be like, but that's, I don't want to live in that world. So there are other things, but you do. One of the things about humility is not false either. So it's true. You write the truth. This is the truth. And so anyway, if that makes a little more sense. But yeah, but I'm going to tell you, there's a lot in the corporate world. I'm not really sure about it. So anyway, so all the good that you have comes from God. The third part is the longest part, right? It's the part where the interior consolations. It's really the big part in the heart of it. This ends up being a dialogue with Jesus. And so you got to pay attention to who's speaking. Is it Jesus that's speaking, or is it the person, the beloved in Jesus, And so it's a dialogue between Jesus and the disciple. You want to contrast it's going to contrast those of the world and those of God. And spiritual progress is offering oneself to the divine will and not seek his own will. Always God's will. So, I'll share something in terms of it. Some who've heard me preach know that I say this a lot. But we're dealing with a pandemic, right? The issue with this pandemic is and there's a lot of anxiety over this and a lot of fear. But I think for the Christian, we have to believe, that divine providence has allowed this to happen. All right? In one sense, it wasn't China, you say it's China, whatever. In the end, even all of however it came up, God has allowed this to happen. And I believe that God can change it if and when he wants. And he doesn't have his hands tied behind the people in authority right now, right? That he will make things happen as he wants. Therefore, as a believer, he's allowed something evil to happen. My goal is, how do I interact with this? How do I deal with this? And first and foremost, even though I'm called to be good and holy and consistent and faithful to God, I still must have, as the most basic thing, I have confidence in God's divine providence. And that if this will end, it'll be ending by God's providence. It is when he says it will end and not end. It doesn't mean we're all puppets, but he will allow this to happen. He's allowed this to happen, and I have no idea why. And that's part of the humility. And I remember talking about, when we say God knows why, we usually means nobody knows. That's what the saying usually gets thrown out as. God knows why. But then for the person of faith, that's a real statement of prayer. God knows why this is happening. And that's enough for me as a person of faith. Therefore, I don't know what the future is going to hold, but my world isn't here anyway. My world is in the eternal life, and I'm here and I'm called by God to live I can in the things that I have to face, and what God's put in. Therefore, I have a sense of confidence, hopefully, in the midst of the world of fear. Does that make sense? I hope. Because then you understand that it's God's will. And I'm here about God's will. And I'm going to help out God. And I think that's very, very important. And that's why in book 3, to not be anxious about the future or the absence of God or being lost in the difficulties of life, because we are confident that he is closer to us than we realize, right? And he is our hope in the end. So that does hopefully change even the basic disposition of the way we approach life. I don't know if but it's hard because we're going to sort of then I have to get in and fix it in, and maybe God doesn't know as much as I do. And so which is oftentimes what we say is so the internal renunciation of yourself unites you with God. He is the way, the truth, and the life, period. And so that's why there are things, and it doesn't mean that you can you can see that if I could be easily sitting with, and I'll just throw it out for laughter more than anything else, a Jesuit for a joke. Just for those who love Jesuits, I'm just kidding. Okay? But where it'd be like, no, it's about changing the institutions. It's about fighting and demonstrating, and you wouldn't find necessarily some of that in here. It would be about accepting God's will and the divine providence. Now, what's for sure is Thomas Kempis is not the only writer ever. So, and he's not God himself. So he's written the spirituality, but that it's very influential and very important. But there are other aspects that take up this, 5,000-year religion, Judeo-Christian religion. But there is some truth, a lot of truth in that, because that internal renunciation unites yourself with God, and therefore we don't have to be anxious about the future, in the absence of God in our life. So, the last chapter about the Blessed Sacrament. Time is almost all the time to go. Okay, good. We'll finish it. Last chapter. Oh, you know what? I forgot I had all of these on the slides. There we go. Do not be anxious about the future. I found these nice little pictures online. They're all different versions. Look at this little itty bitty one of the Imitation of Christ. I thought that was but that's how little that book is. Can you imagine? They used to keep them in their pockets, right? And then very dramatic drawings. So book 4 is on the Blessed Sacrament. The Blessed Sacrament, the spiritual graces is conferred, and the soul gets strength, and the mind. I have that on here. Yeah, the mind is made strong, and the body is renewed, and that has been debilitated by sin. Makes clean the mansions of your heart when you receive the sacrament. And Jesus says that there's no offering more worthy, no sacrifice greater for washing away sins than to offer oneself purely and completely to God at the time of the body of Christ is offered at Mass and in communion. So remember that one of the things there are two aspects in terms of liturgy, in terms of the body of Christ and the celebration of the Eucharist. There is the action of the celebration, which is the offering of Christ, at Calvary on the altar. That consecrates the body and blood into Christ. That's one aspect. And we would talk about the static presence, which is his presence after that event and the reception of that communion. And so that's why he's talking about both of those, where he says, completing God, the time of the body of Christ is offered in the Mass. That's, and we're going to be doing a teaching Mass again, those old-fashioned teaching Masses we used to do, but talking about the offering that happens and how important that, understanding that this is when Christ offers himself, and we're supposed to join ourselves into that offering. And there's no greater washing away of sins than to joining yourself with Christ on the cross at Mass. All right? So, this is the introduction to the Imitation of Christ. We're going to start pages, so I put it up there, pages 23 to 55. You can read as much as often as you want. That gives you the schedule. And then please do not worry if you're keeping up with reading. Just like the other book, we're going to read it the rest of your life. If you haven't read Introduction to Devout Life, I want to kind of make some connections. So you see, St. Francis said this. Now, Francis was later than Kempis, so you could see how he was influenced, or it sounds a lot like him. All right, so we're going to do pages 23 to 55, which is really most of chapter 1, except for like 3 or 4 pages, 3 or 4 chapters, because I want to try to keep it within chapter 2, so a little smaller. So that's why it's 55 to 90. Let's do a little Glory Be, because it is 7:30, and I promise you guys it's only 6:30 to 7:30. All right, good. I'm not sure what that is. We'll do Glory Be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Great. So remember that this book is not for beginners. So if you think it's nice and easy, you're not reading it right. There's your reality. So good night, my friends, all of you, all 117 of you. All right.